Hello again, Ed Romero community. My name is Hallie Hancock. I am a student physical therapist, and I'm back to talk to you a little bit more about aerobic exercise today. All right, so aerobic recommendations, let's get to it. So topics we're going to cover today. What is aerobic exercise? Is it safe to start? Recommendations, ideas, exercise, and mood. So first off, what is aerobic exercise? I know that when I was first learning about this concept, I didn't understand what they were trying to tell me. Aerobic, anaerobic, it all just felt like exercise to me. So why does it matter? Aerobic means that it's with oxygen, which is also kind of funny because in theory you'd think everything takes oxygen, but if you're doing things really fast, it doesn't necessarily need oxygen. It's usually over a longer period that you do need oxygen. So aerobic means with oxygen, and it is exercise that increases the breathing and the heart rate. So examples are listed below are walking or running, biking, swimming, rowing, and hiking. There are more examples listed later, but we'll get there after a few more slides. So the first thing you need to do before you start exercise, especially if you haven't been, is make sure that it is safe for you to start. So if you've been doing an exercise program, it's a little different, but just if you haven't been exercising, make sure that it's safe before you start. And then this right here is called a PAR-Q, which is your Physical Activity Readiness Questionnaire for everyone, PAR-Q. So they're just general questions and try to answer honestly for yourself. Has your doctor ever said that you have a heart condition or high blood pressure? Yes or no? Do you feel pain in your chest at rest during your daily activities of living or when you're doing physical activity? Yes or no? Do you lose balance because of dizziness or have you lost consciousness in the last 12 months? It's a no if your dizziness was associated with over-breathing, such as like during activity. Yes or no? Have you ever been diagnosed with another chronic medical condition other than heart disease or blood pressure? Yes or no? Are you currently taking prescribed medications for a chronic medical condition? Yes or no? Do you currently have or have had within the past 12 months a bone, joint, or soft tissue referring to muscle, ligament, or tendon problems that could be made worse by becoming more physically active? Please say no if you had a problem in the past, but it does not limit your current ability to be physically active. Yes or no? Has your doctor ever said that you should do only medically supervised physical activity? Yes or no? All right, so if you said no to all of those questions, you are cleared for physical activity. If you said yes, it's recommended that you go back to your doctor before you start activity that you haven't been doing previously. Okay, so the next slide, this is on ACSM recommendations. So the ACSM is this entity that we keep referring to, but if you don't understand why we respect it, then it's not relevant to you. So the reason that this is kind of the gold standard in a way for recommendations is because they take research and practical and educational recommendations are made from it for exercise and health so that people can live a healthier life, with that being their primary goal. So the recommendation in this picture up above is 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity and then muscle strengthening 2 times per week. This is something I'm going to elaborate on for the aerobic activity in this video, and strengthening will be in the next one. Okay, frequency. So the frequency they recommend with the ACSM is greater than 5 days each week of moderate activity, or greater than 3 days each week of vigorous activity, or a combination of 3 to 5 days each with a combination of moderate and vigorous activity. So it gives you flexibility because you can work out at the level that you prefer, but it does give you that recommendation for how often it should be done. Intensity. So the Borg scale is, it's a great way to measure for yourself how you're feeling. So how hard do you feel that you're working? And that's what the Borg scale will do for you. So with it, ideally you want to get your heart rate up so that you're feeling tired when you're doing aerobic exercise. So ideally you'd want to be at about a 5 or a 6 for moderate exercise, or a 7 to 8 for vigorous. And then I have the scale listed over here. Basically, it's very light activity, feels like you're hardly doing anything, almost sleeping, watching TV, very, very light. 2 to 3 is going to be, I can do this forever, I can maintain it for hours, it's easy to breathe, I can carry on a conversation, no problem. Moderate activity is going to be, I'm breathing heavily, I can do a short conversation, it's still comfortable, but it's becoming more challenging. Vigorous activity is borderline uncomfortable. You're short of breath, you can speak a sentence, but it's getting harder too. And then a 9, very hard activity. It's really difficult to maintain that intensity. You can barely breathe, you can only speak a word or two. And then a 10 is your max effort activity. It's almost impossible to keep going. You're completely out of breath, you can't talk, and you can do it for a really, really short time. So this is what the scale is, and one thing that's great about it is that it's up to you to decide where you're at on the scale. And then based on how you're feeling is where you're at on it. Another way that you can measure it, the talk test is what we call it, but under moderate activity right here, I talked about talking as a way to measure. So if you can talk, but you wouldn't be able to sing, this is kind of a sign that you're at that moderate level. Okay, next is going to be time. So how much time should you spend doing exercise that's aerobic? Well, for a moderate intensity, you want to spend between 30 to 60 minutes each of those days for 5 days total, ideally, doing exercise. For vigorous, 20 to 30 minutes each day of exercise is enough, is sufficient. Or you could do a combination of both. Exercise, also, if you're just starting, something that's really great is that you don't have to do it all at once. If you have 10 extra minutes, you can just go for a quick walk before your next appointment or the next errand. You can accumulate minutes throughout the day to try and reach those goals. Type. Anything that gets your heart rate up is aerobic. So be careful not to push to the point of injury. That's really important that you listen to your body, because your body knows what you can handle and you know what you can handle. So what you're doing should be within reason, to your level, and then it'll increase over time as you get better. So you can add from there as you feel yourself improving. But types that you can do would be walking, jogging, hiking, swimming, biking, jazzercise. There's a lot of options. You can really do anything that you want. It's just really important to get up, get moving, and get your heart rate up. Okay, progression. So you're going to progress slowly. As it gets easier, then you will start progressing. So signs that you're progressing would be not breathing as hard. Your talking is getting easier while you're exercising. You feel like you can go longer without needing a break. And then referring back to that scale I talked about earlier, the Borg scale, it would be a 1 to 4 from this point. So If we go up, 1 to 4 being light activity, very light activity, or the lower end of moderate. Okay. Exercise can help improve some chronic conditions, but you have to be careful to listen to your body. Some examples are diabetes and hypertension. You need to listen to your body and make sure you're not pushing yourself to the point that it'll cause more problems for you. This picture over here shows just kind of an example of starting slow, especially as you're beginning, but then over time, you can increase how long and how often you're doing it, and maybe even how fast you're going, just based on what activity you're doing. All right, some ideas: exercise, walking, jogging, running, biking, swimming, rowing, hiking, jazzercise, group exercise classes are all really great ways that you can get active. Some ideas for type, we'll start with continuous. Continuous would mean that you're going constant. And so let's say we're walking. You're walking from the start to the finish of when you're exercising. With intervals, you can change the pace. So let's say we're walking again. You can start slow. Maybe as you kind of feel like you're in a good rhythm, you pick up the pace. You walk a little bit faster, and then you can go back to slow. That would be an interval. You can also do walking, take a little bit of a break, catch your breath, back to walking. So that's what intervals include. Otherwise, you could do HIIT training, which is high intensity interval training. It sounds really overwhelming, but it basically just means that you're pushing yourself to that vigorous level of activity and then giving yourself time to recover, and then doing something else and pushing yourself and then giving yourself time to recover. It's really about getting your heart rate way up and then coming back down. And then another option, and one that I really enjoy, is circuit training. So circuit training means that you're going to do an activity for an amount of time, but then you're going to move on and do something else. And it kind of gives you a break in a way, because you're not doing the same thing the whole time, but then it allows you to move on, and then at the end of your circuit, you can take a longer break. Okay. Exercise and mood. Exercise is linked to increased motivation, feelings of positive reward, and habit. This is from Topes et al. So with that in mind, it's a positive to exercise, and it should help you to feel more motivated, feel like you have more energy, and more ready to take on the day. Workouts also increase your dopamine release in the brain. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's released by the brain. So it's just this little molecule that causes you to have kind of a rush of pleasure, reward, motivation. This is all triggered by dopamine and that molecule. So when you're exercising, you feel that release. You might not feel it while you're doing the exercise, but afterwards you feel a little bit of that. And the longer you do it, the more that you'll realize that change after. All right, and that's the end of my presentation. As always, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions. Aerobic exercise is one of my favorite topics, and I'm happy to talk about it and brainstorm and just kind of meet you guys where you're at. So let me know if you need anything. Thank you.